This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to episode number 11. In this podcast, I chat with a K9 officer that you'll know as Paul. We're not going to give his last name. He's an active police officer on the job right now in Southern California. We kind of just go by his first name, and he describes to you the area and the basic demographics of the area that he's policing, just to protect him because he is active out there doing the work. So it was a really fun interview. We actually did it while he was on duty over Skype. So there is, at one point, a call comes in. He has to run to the call, and then he gives me a call back, and we finish up. So it was a really great interview. I was really happy to have him on. I think you're really going to enjoy it. The podcast has been doing really well. I know I keep saying that, but it just keeps doing better and better. You know, it's not like a huge hit yet, but it is gaining steam, and it's trending upwards. So I thank you all for that, and I'm getting questions now, which is really awesome. So keep them coming. If you have suggestions, any questions for me or for a guest, or if you want to be a guest on the show, just contact me at thingspolicec@gmail.com, and I will answer that email promptly. So without further ado, here is episode 11. Paul, thank you for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it, man.
Oh, anytime. My pleasure.
Excited to have you on. You and I worked together at a high-end security gig once in a while. It's where I met you. And you're actually an active police officer in Southern California. Really cool to have you on because usually I've had a few other active people on, not from California. They're all the California guys I've had on are retired. So having you on while you're still on the job is really cool. And this is a first for the podcast. Also, you're actually on duty right now. So we're going to try to have no interruptions, but there's no guarantee for that.
Right.
So you work for a small city or medium-sized city in Southern California, just outside of like the Los Angeles area. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, it's about 50 miles east of Los Angeles and what we call the Inland Empire area. It's a heavily populated area. Backs up to a lot of cities. The majority of crimes that occur out in the city, it is a high crime volume area. That is very low income in some of the cities, my city being one of them. So the demographics are predominantly Hispanic for culture basis purposes, and I would say the city's got maybe 65,000 with about 60 officers.
Okay. Well, and like most of these places outside of people back home where I'm from the East Coast don't understand how gigantic it is out here and how big the populations are, but Los Angeles County is surrounded by a bunch of other cities like that size that are
right.
They're cities, they're not towns. There's 65,000 people, so it just goes out for miles and miles. And your main function where you patrol is K9 officer?
Yes, I've been a K9 officer since 2006.
Okay, and I think you told me once before you started in the Air Force, right?
Did start in the Air Force and worked military working dogs, and then wanted to pursue that into the civilian law enforcement. Totally two different entities, but K9 seems to be the passion where I'm at, and I think I'm going to try to make it a career, and hopefully I can retire as a K9 handler.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool. I mean, that is definitely a specialty you have to love, right? Because that's a lot of work. You maintaining that animal all the time. And I have buddies back home that did K9, and they're like, yeah, it's great. You're involved in a lot, but you know, if it's pouring rain out or snow or 115 degrees, the dog needs to go out. You need to go with it. You need to care for it. If you need to go on vacation, you have to have someone, a lot of times hide drugs for it. So that's my hat's off to you, man. That's a lot of work.
Yes, it's definitely it's a full-time job. But the one thing I do like about K9, they're always learning. Just when you think you've mastered something, your dog is teaching you a new thing. So to me, it's a learning process as well as a teaching process. I think the best way I could describe it being a handler is a partnership. I'm learning, my dog is learning, and together we're working together to accomplish a task. So to me, it's every dog has been different, and I'm constantly I guess staying on my toes and learning, and that's what I like about K9.
Let me run this by you, because I heard this once and I don't remember where, but Is it true that the canines, like when they're tracking a human, that your skin is always like cascading off the human body and making little piles? Like if you stand in one place, the skin piles up more, and then if you walk someplace, you're just kind of dropping skin cells. Is that what they smell when they track? Is that right?
I'll be honest with you. I mean, to me, that's a little too technical when it comes to like the scientific part of it. I know that we do leave human odor behind, and the dog can pick up the scent of the human odor. Some dogs are a lot better of, searching after, say a suspect takes away or takes off from us. Some dogs can track a lot longer than other dogs. It just depends on the environment, where the person walked across, how the dog's going to pick it up. But in an urban environment like this, it's really hard to get that just one odor that we're looking for. Whereas maybe back east, if someone goes through a wooded area, that's going to be the only odor out there that the dog is tracking. So I think they have a better success rate when it comes to tracking. Here in an urban environment, there's people walking. If I have my dog out, people are coming out of their apartment, coming out of their house. It's really hard. So what we kind of like to do out here is not so much a tracking, it's wind scenting, just trying to pick up the odor that we're looking for.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Yeah, definitely back where I'm from, where it's more rural. Like one of the towns I policed next to even had a bloodhound.
Mm-hmm.
He just only thing he did was track, find lost kids and elderly people and stuff like that. And he just, there was no risk of him biting or anything. He would just lick people,
right.
When he found them.
And the Bloodhound, it is making an impact in California. Many agencies are using them. But what we kind of use our patrol dogs for, just because of the environment, is a lot of yard-to-yard stuff. Because if a suspect does flee from us, the likelihood of him jumping into yard-to-yard, so we have concrete walls, barriers, fences, everything. So a lot of it is just perimeter containment and searching yard to yard or property to property with the dog. Because we have a lot of obstacles out here just because of the environment.
Yeah, it must be so much work. I mean, that's one thing I noticed when we moved here a year and a half ago is the properties here, it doesn't matter where you go, there's fencing. There's fencing for every square inch of property. Back east, it's pretty much what people's land just kind of runs into each other. Here, it's, like you said, concrete blocks.
K9. They're going to dispatch me to a call, so.
Okay. So Paul had to take off like we thought might happen. We're about 7 minutes in, so we're going to give him time to go to that call. I'll be on standby, and we'll pick up where we left off. Paul, you're back.
Yes, I am.
All right. Hope you didn't get too sweaty out there. So what we were talking about, you were talking about fenced properties, and I was just kind of saying that's a huge thing I noticed out here and I've never really thought about when it came to canine work is everybody in California, Southern California, has their property like barricaded completely.
Right.
Even like poor neighborhoods, everybody has it.
Right, it does. It creates an obstacle. Can the dog still do its job effectively? Yes. Do we try to train through that? Absolutely. But when it comes, for at least the patrol dog side, not every dog, every handler's different how he trains his dog, but at least with me, I felt that we use more of a wind scenting and perimeter containment to locate a suspect. If things are requiring more of a specialty, we will request the Bloodhound and stuff like that.
Okay, cool. So there is definitely a specialty for them.
Right.
All right, Paul, I'm going to ask you the first question I have here for you. Can you tell us about the first hot call that you responded to when you were a younger officer, the first call that really got your blood going and you were like, whoa, this is for real?
I want to say it didn't start when I was working for a police agency. It actually started when I was a deputy sheriff in the jails. I can remember I was maybe about 3 months on, and I was working at one of the old jail systems where people were actually taken from their units and brought into a mess hall or a chow hall. So we were, bringing all the inmates in, and you probably had about 100 to 150 people within this one room. And all of a sudden, without any hesitation, a fight broke out. It was almost like it was planned. They knew what they were going to do, but it really taken me by surprise and kind of woken my eyes up to what I may be dealing with, either if I stayed with the sheriff's department or coming out to the streets. I mean, it was pure chaos, violence, everything. Luckily, I wasn't attacked, but I was able to push my way away and protect myself and the other deputy that was on the other room. But that was a big wake-up call to me. Obviously, you know, I've throughout my 17-year career, I've been able to go on hot calls or everything, but that was the one that I think was the wake-up call for me, and it happened very, very short into my career.
Yeah, those, I mean, because in that scenario, there's only so many guards, and they lock you in there, right?
Yeah, they start shutting the doors, and everything's getting locked in, and then you just kind of hold off yourself until your backup arrives, either with less lethal options. But talk about being very vulnerable and realizing that, you know, you have to protect yourself. That was one of the things that really just stood out to me in my career. And ever since then, I think it's shaped me as a police officer for self-protection. I can't always rely on my tools because I didn't really have any tools at that time.
Yeah, so. Right. And that's witnessing something like that early in your career, too. You get to see the propensity of violence in a situation like that. It's crazy. And like you said, you're locked in there. We had a little small booking room where I worked, and we'd book all of our own people. You know, we didn't have booking officers. And I hated the feeling of being locked in there with just one person, one suspect, you know? Mm-hmm. I can't imagine the feeling of having all of them in there and kind of waiting for the cavalry to come. And was this, what gang started it? Was it a gang thing, or obviously?
It was more of a divide between race. It was Hispanics and blacks fighting. But you know, everything probably has a gang ties in jails, but it was two races against one. Because the whites and the Hispanics linked up together. But to me, it was just chaos. I wasn't really paying attention too much of what it was about or what was going on. I didn't do any homework on my end to find out what started all this. I just, you know, was more worried about just defending myself and just keeping people away from me. But like I said, you know, luckily nothing happened to me. I wasn't targeted. So me and the other deputy that were in there, we walked out of that one very, very thankful.
Yeah, I bet. Paul, can you describe the strangest or most bizarre thing you've dealt with?
The most bizarre thing I've dealt with in my career, I want to say I got my partner and I got a call of a house being destroyed by an individual. I guess they got some of the neighbors were calling that there was a subject inside their house, breaking things, destroying things, loud music was playing. So we get out there, but when we arrive on scene, it's very quiet. All the lights are off in the house, but every window is broken out. There's a trail of blood that led from the sidewalk, pouring blood all the way up inside the residence. I push open the door. The house is completely destroyed, and there's blood everywhere. As I use my light to kind of scan the living room area, I noticed a subject sitting on top of an aquarium in almost like a fetal position, covered in blood, and he had self-mutilated himself. To me, it was very bizarre. This guy just got destroyed. He's cut up. He's got lacerations all over him, and he's still standing with a blank stare. In my mind, someone that just did that to themselves is going to be very hard to control. So we started getting, you know, paramedics en route, got more officers there. But what shocked me the most was when my partner and I actually had to go hands-on with this person. We were expecting a full-blown fight. It was nothing. He cooperated, didn't say anything. He allowed us to gently put handcuffs on him and get him over to the paramedics' gurney and loaded him up. But to me, that was very strange.
That is bizarre.
Whether it was drug-related or something, we don't know why he self-mutilated himself. But he ended up surviving and haven't been back to the house since.
Well, and that's weird too. It's not like a repeat customer because it sounds like he was definitely exercising or they call it the demons, you know?
Right.
That's crazy. And how did you said self-mutilated? What did he do?
he had, well, I don't know if the lacerations to himself were probably from the breaking of the glass, but it appeared like he had cut open his inner thigh and taken one of his testicles off.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, so I don't know if he was trying to castrate himself or whatnot, but he definitely, he caused a lot of damage. And I think if we didn't get him, if we didn't ride when we did, he would have probably bled out.
Holy cow! That is nuts. That's totally nuts. Obviously, you double gloved for that one.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. All right. Can you tell me, and this could be difficult because it sounds like you've had a pretty spicy career so far, but
Yes.
can you tell me the most intense call or even terrifying call that you went on so far?
Terrifying call. It's really hard for me to just pinpoint something that just really shocked my mind. I think I have worked in a very active city, seen a lot of things, been present on shootings, homicides, officer-involved shootings. So when it comes to terrifying, I really can't pinpoint something that just stands out in my mind. I think I've not become numb to what I do on a daily basis, but I don't really isolate certain calls that I go on to now.
I totally get it, man, because I Googled that area that you're policing, and it's probably like when you first start, a first couple calls shock you, or you're like, whoa, okay, and then it could be a real problem if everything was terrifying that you went to, because you kind of acclimate to that, right? You kind of like, all right, this is kind of like what we're operating at. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you go to these calls all the time, and then I believe isn't your wife a police officer as well?
Yes.
And so she's not shocked by them. So then, once in a while, one of these stories might escape to someone who's not in law enforcement, and they're like, "What? That's absolutely insane."
Right. I mean, and I think something that seems somewhat normal to me may not be normal to anybody else. But the way I look at it, it's those hot, terrifying calls. It's got to be on a daily basis. You just basically build up a tolerance to it. You train yourself to how to deal with it effectively, and you kind of learn to let it go, so you can go home and live a normal life.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Let me ask you another question here. That's kind of all over the news right now. Literally, a question about the media. You're a guy that's on the job right now, and you're dealing with the backlash of the way the media reports. And I mean, the media has always been kind of they've always kind of amplified things when they report on them, but it seems like even more so in the last few years, they're kind of just taking things and running with them and throwing them out there before they're really doing any kind of investigative journalism at all. They're just kind of throwing it out there and not even really apologizing later. And I have to believe, for someone on the front lines like you, that's really got to affect your job in a negative way on a daily basis.
And I think that's the biggest struggle that I have in law enforcement till this day. Everything else I can deal with, the crime, the tragedy, all that, I can, there's good things that also do come out of law enforcement by helping people. But the one thing that's affected me the most in law enforcement is how we're portrayed. I do feel in law enforcement we're getting an unfair image. We're definitely getting categorized into a few bad officers, I would just say, that have made very poor decisions. And I've been lumped into this so-called anti-police corrupt society that they think law enforcement is. So it is very difficult to do my job nowadays because everybody thinks you're corrupt. And I'm not saying, and when I say everybody, I don't want to say everybody. It's just, it just seems like the majority of calls we handle nowadays, we're not trusted. So every time we start trying to rebuild that bridge within the community to get us to trust us and work together and show that, we are normal people and we are here to help, another incident may happen back east or down south. And guess what? I'm paying the price for that officer's actions. And it's almost like we're a gang mentality. We're all lumped into the one thing, and I don't think any other profession gets to experience that. Because when somebody else, like a doctor, messes up, or a firefighter, or any other professional messes up, their counterparts are not affected truly by it.
Right, and you'll get shouted at the next day about a cop in Maryland that shot someone or whatever.
Absolutely. And, with the media reporting, I get it. I think those things should be exposed to the public when officers do messed up, but we should be getting stuff to also combat those negative images, like the good stuff that we do. And I really don't think the media likes to portray that side of us. I mean, you can see that, if we do something good, it may get like a quick 30-second to a minute shot on the big screen, or on the news. But we do something negative, and that's trailing us for years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the stats say it. It's like less than 1% of officers in the country ever screw up or do anything bad. But that's the narrative. That's what they run on. Is that 1%, and that makes things terrible for you guys who are out there doing it.
Right. And I've had a very successful career. Never been severely punished. I've never been discredited based on my decision making. I've done what I was supposed to do as a police officer. But again, it doesn't matter now that I wear the uniform, I drive the car. Even if, you talk to somebody about your profession nowadays, it's just, in modern society, it doesn't seem like it's an honored or respected profession. However, there are a core group of people out there that do support law enforcement. And those are the people that keep us going, I believe. The ones that actually just come up to you and say, thank you, or talk to you and treat you as a normal person. That's what keeps us going. So it's the small percentage of those people that are actually pro-police and supporting us, I think is what's motivating officers to continue doing the day-to-day job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember you told me once, and when we were working together, I kind of asked you how it was going, and you said, it's all right. It's just, and I thought this was such a good point. You said it's like some days are hard because no one wants anyone profiling racially or profiling at all, and but the public has no problem with profiling the police. Like they don't mind throwing on your shoulders everything every cop's ever done, but they don't want that back the other way.
Right. That is everything that people are complaining that the police are doing. It's right back on us. And, profiling is a very touchy subject across the nation. And I don't even want to touch base on that. I think, from what I've learned in California and the officers that I've worked, I don't see profiling at all. I just see officers responding to calls and doing their job and working in their demographic area.
Absolutely.
And if a certain if a certain population is primarily one thing, that's what you're going to be dealing with. I don't know how that's profiling. If anything, they're profiling crime. And I've even seen some officers take a step back now. They won't do anything unless a crime has been committed. So what we're doing now, it seems, is maybe they're creating a reactive police force. And I don't know if that's what society wants, if it benefits everybody. I don't know. It's just kind of up in the air right now.
Yeah, because officers don't want to be bit by that. And, like you were saying, it's if you look at all the crime stats, not just the FBI, but other studies that have been done by universities, police are 75-80% of the time, they're responding to the community because the community called in that neighborhood. They're not there, jumping on people for these. You guys get kind of called, and now you get this pile of shit you got to deal with and sort through because it's your duty. Right. Someone called for help, even if it's a BS thing, you still got to stand there and see it through. So I can imagine that incredibly.
And one tool that's actually helped me is learning to explain things to people. It's bad enough that people have to be told what to do in an authoritative setting. If we're out there trying to enforce something, even, there's shouting matches and it's hard to break through to get people to listen to you, at least make that attempt to explain things to them. I've brought people back and I've showed not people's information, but show them that, hey, this is the call comments that I got on. This is what was dispatched to me. This is how it reads. Just so they have a fair understanding of what I'm coming to, why we responded the way we did.
Right.
A lot of people don't understand that. Maybe it's our job nowadays to educate people, explain people, take the extra time to make people understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it.
That's a great point.
And for the most part, that does it calms things down. You can get people to reason with you a little bit more. And it's worked for me. I don't, brushing it off or just saying that's how it is or, ignoring it. I think that it increases rage in people.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. And a few people have echoed that sentiment actually that I've interviewed before. They said, just take the time to explain to people so they're not, they don't have that bad taste in their mouth, so that's great. Paul, I really appreciate you being with us. I know you're on duty and your time is precious, but one more question for you. Do you have any advice to young officers or people who are looking into getting into police work?
I'll give you the advice that was given to me. I come from a generation of law enforcement, so the same advice that my dad gave me before I entered this profession was always treat people fairly, treat people the way you would want to be treated. If you're going to work in a specific community, understand that community before you go out there to enforce that community. And I think just doing the right thing, continuing to, I guess, go through the academy, you got to do all that stuff. But the one advice I'd give the people that are coming into it, do this job to help people rather than what comes with it, whether it's an image thing, it's a car, whatever it is, why people want to go law enforcement, just make sure helping people is the number one priority. And if you don't lose train of that thought, I think you can be very successful in your career.
Great advice. Paul, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Okay. Thank you. It was my pleasure.